Joe, tell me, why should people have a genetic test?
So genetics is extremely important in telling you a whole bunch of information about your body. It's basically the blueprint of your body, right? And no matter what is going on in your body, no matter what's going on in your environment, there's always an interaction with your genetics. So genetics can increase the risk for things. They can make it more likely, less likely, and then it also impacts what will work for you in terms of supplements, diet, lifestyle. And so knowing this genetic code, your blueprint, your personal blueprint is extremely important throughout your whole life. It's like, it's something like a companion that you want to take throughout your life. It's not something that it's a book that you read once and that's done. You need your genetic information, and for every topic, there's information. There's always new information coming out. It's just something that is extremely important as you go through your health journey.
It's funny because when I first heard about genetics optimization and what you can do with it as a biohacker, it was actually from a little old lady in a clinic in London many, many years ago. And she said, "Oh, I've just had a genetic test done." I said, "Oh, amazing. What's that about?" And she said, "Well, it can tell you about if you need a certain supplement to help you speed up this, make a different supplement. And it's really amazing for you to optimize your supplement stack." And I was like, "Really? Tell me more." So we had a conversation about it for 10 minutes with this little old lady. And for me specifically, it was around the MTHFR gene that I've got one of the variants of, which means obviously I don't detoxify properly. And that was my entryway into it. Obviously, reading the book like Dirty Genes from Dr. Ben Lynch was also another way into knowing more of this. But I guess like people watching this can really understand that they can learn so much more about themselves and optimize things, refine things that they wouldn't normally be able to do. So, I mean, what can people generally optimize as a result of knowing their genetics? And Joe?
You can generally optimize more or less everything in one one degree or another, right? So especially chronic type issues where you have something that's bothering you over time, or your health is not optimal over time. And so we know that chronic health issues are it's an epidemic essentially, right? And so we know that that there's a lot of genes that increase the risk for these things, and then there's a lot of healthy lifestyle, diet, and supplements that can also counteract the risk for these things. And then the question is, we also know that some things work much better for some people than other things, right? If one thing worked amazing for everybody, it would be very simple. But we know that there's different things that work for different people, and so that's where the genetics comes into play. It can tell you what your risk is for different things, for different chronic health issues, and then what is the best ways to optimize your health.
So can you give me some specifics that people might typically have that they don't realize what to do with their, how to optimize using their genetic info?
Yeah, so that's a great question. When it comes to specific genes, there's genes that were popularized, like MTHFR, ApoE is very popular. There's the BRCA gene that's very popular. And the reason that they're popular is because they are quite important, right? And so there's things that you can learn for those specific genes. For the most part, it's the way that you want to look at genes is not looking at the genes first, usually. It's looking at what issue, what health area are you trying to optimize? And so let's say you say, well, this is not optimal, right? Let's say it could be my mood is not optimal, my sleep is not optimal. Whatever it is you want to optimize, it's going to be impacted by your genetics, right? And so you have to look at what is not optimal, and then you want to look at what are the top genes that are influencing that are maybe increasing my risk for this kind of issue.
Okay, awesome. So for instance, someone with for instance, migraines from histamine issues, for instance, or someone that is low energy. I mean, it's actually funny because I know someone recently that said, oh, for some reason, the carnivore diet has just suited me so well, and I don't know why. I said, well, get a genetic test then. And obviously they've got a genetic variation that means that they do need significantly more B12, for example. So obviously eating tons of meat means that they get that. eating lots of vegetables doesn't. And so, in fact, instead of being carnivore or having to be carnivore to get all this B12, knowing that and then optimizing, for instance, with the B12 or a methylfolate or adding in some trimethylglycine, for instance, will really mean that they can then have a well-rounded diet and not just have to eat meat. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, is that something that sits with you as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, let's say for the carnivore diet, there are people that are very sensitive to plant-based immune stimulants, right? And so we know that various, chemicals in plants like lectins, they can cause inflammation, they can spike the immune system, and people who are susceptible to that, it could cause autoimmune type issues, right? And so I'm one of those people that is susceptible. And so for me, a gene that's really, really important for me would be a gene like CNR1, which has to do with the cannabinoid receptor. And when you look at this gene, it actually is the cannabinoid system is very, is very related to people with food sensitivities. And that's usually why people on a carnivore diet, they're taking out plants, they're doing better because they're taking out a lot of agents that would irritate their gut, irritate their immune system. And so the cannabinoid system in general, specifically CNR1, is very important for that area, right? So you have to look at the area, and like for migraines, it could be the genes related to histamine, like HNMT. You got to look at the genes for the area that you're interested in, right? Because what that means is that those negative genes are expressing themselves in some way to make you more likely to have that issue, right? Because if somebody's having the issue, if they have migraines, if they have the problem, if they know that, and so that could help them, knowing that you know the problem. Then the next thing you want to do is, what genes are affecting me with this problem? In some cases, like if you really don't know, for example, let's say food sensitivities, you might not know if you have food sensitivities. In that case, you could do, let's say we have a report on food sensitivities, but you could also do an elimination diet. There's different things you could do for that as well. So sometimes you want to look and see if you have the issue, but usually people know that they have an issue. They know that they're tired, or they know that they want more energy. And so you have to look at the issue, and then from there, discover which genes are most important for you as an individual. Because somebody else might have an MTHFR problem, and that's causing a bunch of issues, but somebody, maybe that is affecting migraines or heart disease risk, but somebody else might have high levels of, might have migraines, but not have that gene. So you have to look, what are the genes that are most important for you?
Yeah, I think the other thing is once you know what genes that you've got that might be affected, knowing you can then go and figure out what it is that you need to take to help activate those genes accordingly. And I think that's obviously activating it would be, for instance, with the MTHFR, or one of the methylation genes would be, having more meat-based diet because of the amount of B12, for instance, or taking a supplement and knowing what to do to fix these things. So, I mean, that's where I see that the whole genetics piece fits together. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand it quite so well. So, I mean, that's exactly why I wanted to do a ticket bundle with you, Joe, for the summit, so that really people that have wanted to dive into this area and know more about the genetics, and how it impacts their health issues, especially chronic ones, and then have an opportunity to have a test and a ticket and come along, obviously meet you, see you speak, and obviously know their genes in the meantime as well. And I think it just makes it much more accessible to people. So, I mean, so just out of interest, where do people start with optimizing their genetics, would you say then, Joe, before we round up?
So I think genetics is quite complex, and so you need software to help make sense of it. It's not something that you could just go to some health professional and they just look at your genetic code, the VCF file, and it's very, very complex. You need software to compute all the data. So for example, with our new system that we're launching now, that we just launched, basically, let's say we just launched a report on blood pressure. We're looking at over 1.2 million SNPs just for that report alone, right? And so there's no way any individual is going to be able to do that on, it's going to take them decades, hundreds of years. And so you really need to look at like a lot of data. And the way to do that is with software, data sciences. And so we take all that data and we put it into a report, a nice user-friendly report. And then we also give recommendations that are prioritized so that the user is guided on what are the best ways they can optimize their health. And so the best way to do that is to use software that breaks these things down in a user-friendly way and also prioritizes recommendations. And currently the only one on the market that does that is Selfdecode.
And that's so when people buy the bundle, they get a ticket to the summit, they get access to your data platform so that they can interpret their genetic data, and they get a test as well so that they can actually do the test at home.
Correct.
Awesome. Okay, well, guys watching this, thanks for watching in, and yeah, look forward to seeing you at the summit, and check out Joe's talk. Well, thanks for your time, Joe. It's awesome.
Thanks, Tim. Great speaking to you.